Mara and David both have pieces looking at the future of the Democratic Party in the middle of all this.
So we figure, since we're going to have like intramural battles here, we're going to talk about the intramural battles going on in the Republican Party. Let's talk about the intramural battles going on in the Democratic Party right now. And Mara, I'll go to you right now before we get to the governors, which is sort of the good news, I think, for the Democratic Party. But the mayor's race in New York City is going to take center stage. You've got Andrew Cuomo seen as, the old guard, and you've got other candidates who are seen as too far left. You say Cuomo's candidacy itself is a symptom of the bigger Democratic Party right now. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we have something extraordinary happening in New York. The city may have a reputation outside of New York as a liberal bastion, but actually it's known for electing mostly centrist mayors. There have been exceptions on both sides through really sleepy campaigns. And right now we're actually experiencing something stunning, which is that a Democratic socialist far-left candidate, Zohran Mamdani, has won, appears to be on track to win about 30% of the vote. And so this is really a look, this piece, at why that is. And what I actually found is that Mamdani is not only winning far-left voters, he's eating deep into the base of the Democratic Party's establishment. In moneyed neighborhoods, you're seeing his signs in brownstones that are worth millions of dollars, and also in working class New York. And the reason is because when you talk to voters on the street, and when you live in New York, which I do, there is a group of Democrats, including Andrew Cuomo, and he's a real standard bearer for this, I would argue, who have held on to power by stomping out competition, by using really big name recognition, but haven't really delivered for their constituents. And they've delivered for some of them, but there's a broad base of the Democratic Party, including just young professionals and older people who want to see more fight against Donald Trump. And they are very angry at the Democratic Party establishment. So in some ways, Cuomo's entry into this race has made it hard for other candidates who are consensus builders like Brad Lander to get noticed. And then it's also made it really easy for a lot of Democratic voters to be angry enough to reject a consensus candidate and say, you know what, no one's listening to me. I don't think it's radical to have free childcare or free buses, things that Mamdani is running on. So we're about to see something extraordinary. Mamdani is within one political upset of potentially winning this primary, which is still Cuomo's to lose.
Yeah, and of course, you look at the options, David Drucker, in New York City, and there are a lot of Democrats on both sides. I would say this represents some of the Democratic Party's biggest fears. You look at the gubernatorial candidates that you're writing about. Mikey Sherrill out of New Jersey, Abigail Spanberger out of Virginia. I mean, if you asked AI to give you two perfect Democratic candidates running for governors in states that shouldn't be swing states, but became swing states in 2024, I got a feeling you would come up with those two candidates. Talk about why they give Democrats a reason to cheer.
Well, look, if you're a Democrat and you're concerned or exasperated because you weren't, not only did you not win a presidential election last year, but you weren't able to beat a very flawed candidate, then you're trying to figure out what it is about the party's appeal that didn't work. And usually, Joe, we talk so much about messaging and ads and that stuff can matter, but this stuff really is simple. Find a compelling candidate that people like and believe. And even if they don't agree with them all the time, they at least think they're being true to who they are. And what you have in Abigail Spanberger in Virginia and Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey are two, what I would say is tonally moderate. Their voting records, I think, for Democratic voters are just fine on a lot of the hot-button political issues. But they present for a broad audience as tonally moderate, as welcoming and open. And then they've just got good qualities, right? I mean, they're from the suburbs. They're military veterans. Spanberger, a CIA clandestine officer, Mikey Sherrill, a Navy helicopter pilot. And they focus on local issues and just issues that Democratic voters generally, but voters overall care about. One of the issues Democrats have had is that Democratic politicians often will focus on, abortion rights and things like that. And what voters are consumed by right now is affordability and public safety and other local issues. And what these two candidates have done is talk about the things that are top of mind for voters right now, not just things that are generally in the menu of things that Democrats believe. And that is key. Just one last thing. When I look at the messaging from these two candidates, they talk relentlessly about affordability, and then only occasionally they'll mention, by the way, I'll stand up to Trump, as opposed to Trump, 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 and oh, by the way, affordability. And that is key.
That is key. Donald Trump will not be on the ballot again in the future, and Democrats need to figure out a way forward to winning without just focusing on Donald Trump. And you are so right. That is so important. You lead with affordability. You lead with the struggles of working Americans. And that's how you move forward. I want to underline something Mike Barnicle that David just said is so critically important, and I don't think a lot of politicians understand this. The medium is the message. And as Marshall McLuhan said, the medium is the message. The candidate is the message. They don't sort through bios. They don't sort through, their positions on a lot of issues unless they're really way out there. It's, there's so many times I would walk into a room and 3 minutes after I was in the room, I just look around and I go, okay, I got this. I'm going to be fine. There are times Meek and I would walk in the room, she'd look around, she'd go, you just keep quiet and let me talk.
This is not your room.
Yeah, if you've got the right candidate to match the room, to match the community, to match the district, to match the state,
the church,
then everything else is secondary. And these two candidates in New Jersey and Virginia certainly look like they fit that bill.
Yeah, so I certainly agree with that. But what's really interesting in what Mara and David were talking about is what happens to Democrats who go to Washington, D.C. Seemingly they lose their focus on things that are really important to voters. And I'd call it the 3 S's: schools, safety, and the third S, I forget what it is, shopping. That's what it is. It's how people lead their lives. Yeah. They're interested in their children going to public schools. What kind of an education are they going to get? They're interested in public safety. They don't want to defund the police. They want more and better police. They want shopping. They want to be able to go and buy groceries that are affordable and not break the bank coming out of a grocery store and missing a mortgage payment because of the cost of groceries. These are simple, basic things. This is how Americans live. You go to Washington as a member of Congress or a member of the United States Senate as a Democrat, and something happens. You lose your focus on what's truly important out there.
I wish it was that simple, but it's not a simple landscape. I mean, you've got such divisions even in the media of what even the truth is. I think that Democrats are up against a very uphill battle. But I do agree with the basics there.
I agree with Mike. And I mean, they're in an uphill battle if they're running against, again, I'll go back to what David says, if they're running against Donald Trump,
right, and
they're trying to disprove everything that he says. A lot of voters are sitting there going, yeah, okay, we know he exaggerates. We know he's done this. Like, how am I going to afford to send my kid to college? How am I going to afford my grocery bills? How am I going to afford to fill up my tank? Am I going to have to continue filling it up halfway? And when you're that candidate, and as David said, when you're focusing on affordability instead of other politicians, that connects with people.
All right.